Okay, we are on chapter 12, and we're going to do part 2 of this today and see how far we get. Yesterday's reading was rather intense, and it allowed us to see, if we maintain the awareness, what plane we're operating on, or what plane others are operating on, or where we're at the time, if we can keep that awareness and observe it. So very interesting. All right, so what is memory? Now, having noted the changes in the vehicles which arise from impacts from the external world, the response to these as changes of consciousness, the feebler vibrations produced in the vehicles by the reaction of consciousness, and the recognition of these again by consciousness as memories, let us come to the crux of the question. What is memory? So right away we should see that this should be pretty awesome here. The breaking up of the bodies between death and reincarnation puts an end to their automatism, to their power of responding to vibrations similar to those already experienced. So the breaking up of the bodies between death and reincarnation puts an end to their automatism, to their power of responding to vibrations similar to those already experienced. The responsive groups are disintegrated, and all that remains as a seed for future responses is stored within the permanent atoms. How feeble this is as compared with the new automatisms imposed on the mass of the bodies by new experiences of the external, may be judged by the absence of any memory of past lives initiated in the vehicles themselves. In fact, all the permanent atoms can do is to answer more readily to vibrations of a kind similar to those previously experienced than to those that come to them for the first time. The memory of the cells, or of groups of cells, perishes at death and cannot be said to be recoverable as such. Where then is memory preserved? The brief answer is memory is not a faculty and is not preserved. It does not inhere in consciousness as a capacity, nor is any memory of events stored up in the individual consciousness. Every event is a present fact in the universe consciousness, in the consciousness of the Logos. Everything that occurs in his universe, past, present, and future, is ever there in his all-embracing consciousness, in his eternal now. From the beginning of the universe to its ending, from its dawn to its sunset, all is there, ever present, existent. In that ocean of ideas, all is. We, wandering in the ocean, touch fragments of its contents, and our response to the context is our knowledge. Having known, we can more readily again contact, and this repetition, when falling short of the contact of the outside sheath of the moment with the fragments occupying its own plane, is memory. Okay, so let's see, let's read this again. Having known, we can more readily again contact, and this repetition, when falling short of the contact of the outside sheath of the moment with the fragments occupying its own plane, is memory. All memories are recoverable because all possibilities of image-producing vibrations are within the consciousness of the Logos, and we can share in that consciousness the more easily, as we have previously shared more often similar vibrations. Hence, the vibrations which have formed parts of our experience are more readily repeated by us than those we have never known. And here comes in the value of the permanent atoms. Okay, so the vibrations which have formed parts of our experience are more readily repeated by us than those we have never known. And here comes in the value of the permanent atoms. They thrill out again on being stimulated. The vibrations previously performed, and out of all the possibilities of vibrations of the atoms and molecules of our bodies, those sound out which answer to the note struck by the permanent atoms. The fact that we have been affected vibrationally and by changes of consciousness during the present life makes it easier for us to take out of the universal consciousness that which we have already had experience in our own. Whether it be a memory in the present life or one in a lifelong past, the method of recovery is the same. There is no memory save the ever-present consciousness of the Logos, in whom we literally live and move and have our being, and our memory is merely putting ourselves into touch with such parts of his consciousness as we have previously shared. Hence, according to Pythagoras, all learning is remembrance, for it is the drawing from the consciousness of the Logos into that of the separated self, that which in our essential unity with him is eternally ours. On the plane where the unity overpowers the separateness, we share his consciousness of our universe. On the lower planes where separateness veils the unity, we are shut out therefrom by our unevolved vehicles. It is the lack of responsiveness in these which hinders us, for we can only know the planes through them. Therefore, we cannot directly improve our memory. We can only improve our general receptivity and power to reproduce by rendering our bodies more sensitive, while being careful not to go beyond their limit of elasticity. Also, we can pay attention, i.e., we can turn the awareness of consciousness, we can concentrate consciousness on that special part of the consciousness of the Logos to which we desire to attune ourselves. We need not thus distress ourselves with calculations as to how many angels can stand on the point of a needle, how we can preserve in a limited space the illimitable number of vibrations experienced in many lives, for the whole of the form-producing vibrations in the universe are ever present and are available to be drawn upon by any individual unit, and can be reached as, by evolution, such a one experiences ever more and more. Okay, let's keep going. Remembering and forgetting. Let us apply this to an event in our past life. Some of the circumstances remain in our memory, others are forgotten. Really, the event exists with all its surrounding circumstances, remembered and forgotten alike, in but one state, the memory of the Logos, the universal memory. Anyone who is able to place himself in touch with that memory can recover the whole circumstance as much as we can. The events through which we have passed are not ours, but form parts of the contents of his consciousness, and our sense of property in them is only due to the fact that we have previously vibrated to them, and therefore vibrate again to them more readily than if we contacted them for the first time. We may, however, contact them with different sheaths at different times, living as we do under time and space conditions, which vary with each sheath. The part of the consciousness of the Logos that we move through in our physical bodies is far more restricted than that we move through in our astral and mental bodies, and the contacts through a well-organized body are far more vivid than those through a less organized one. Moreover, It must be remembered that the restriction of area is due to our vehicles only, faced by the complete event, physical, astral, mental, spiritual. Our consciousness of it is limited within the range of the vehicles able to respond to it. We feel ourselves to be among the circumstances which surround the grossest vehicle we are acting in, and which thus touch it from outside, whereas we remember the circumstances which we contact with the finer vehicles, these transmitting the vibrations to the grosser vehicle, which is thus touched from within. The test of objectivity that we apply to circumstances present or remembered is that of the common sense. If others around us see as we see, hear as we hear, we regard the circumstances as objective. If they do not, if they are unconscious of that of which we are conscious, we regard the circumstances as subjective. But this test of objectivity is only valid for those who are active in the same sheaths. If one person is working in the physical body and another in the physical and the astral, the things objective to the man in the astral body cannot affect the man in the physical body, and he will declare them to be subjective hallucinations. The common sense can only work in similar bodies. It will give similar results when all are in physical bodies, all in astral, or all in mental. For the common sense is merely the thought forms of the logos on each plane, conditioning each embodied consciousness and enabling it to respond by certain changes to vibrations in its vehicles. It is by no means confined to the physical plane, but the average humanity at the present stage of evolution has not sufficiently unfolded the indwelling consciousness for them to exercise any common sense on the astral and mental planes. Common sense is an eloquent testimony to the oneness of our indwelling lives. We see all things around us on the physical plane in the same way because our apparently separate consciousnesses are all really part of the one consciousness and soul in all forms. Now, I'm going to read that again. Common sense is an eloquent testimony to the oneness of our indwelling lives. We see all things around us on the physical plane in the same way because our apparently separate consciousnesses are all really part of the one consciousness and soul in all forms. We all respond in the same general way according to the stage of our evolution because we share the same consciousness. And we are affected similarly by the same things because the action and reaction between them and ourselves is the interplay of the one life in varied forms. Recovery of anything by memory, then, is due to the ever-existence of everything in the consciousness of the Logos, and he has imposed upon us the limitations of time and space in order that we may, by practice, be able to respond swiftly by changes of consciousness to the vibrations caused in our vehicles by vibrations coming from other vehicles similarly ensouled by consciousness. Thus only can we gradually learn to distinguish precisely and clearly, contacting things successively, that is, being in time, and contacting them in relative directions in regard to ourselves and to each other, that is, being in space, we are gradually unfolded to the state in which we can recognize all simultaneously and each everywhere, that is, out of time and space. So essentially we're preparing our vehicles, our body, our consciousness. We're preparing this one by one, experience by experience, so that way we can be multidimensional. But it has to be injected individually. Right? Is that How's that sound? As we pass through countless happenings in life, we find that we do not keep in touch with all through which we have passed. There is very limited power of response in our physical vehicle, and hence numerous experiences drop out of its purview. In trance, we can recover these, and they are said to emerge from the subconscious. Truly, they remain ever unchanging in the universal consciousness, and as we pass by them, we become aware of them because the very limited light of our consciousness, shrouded in the physical vehicle, falls upon them, and they disappear as we pass on. But as the area covered by that same light shining through the astral vehicle is larger, they again appear when we are in trance, that is, in the astral vehicle, free from the physical. They have not come and gone and come back again, but the light of our consciousness in the physical vehicle had passed on, and so we saw them not, and the more extended light in the astral vehicle enabled us to see them again. As Bhagavan Das has well said, if a spectator wandered unrestingly through the halls of a vast museum, a great art gallery, at the dead of night with a single small lamp in one hand, each of the natural objects, the pictured scenes, the statues, the portraits, would be illumined by that lamp in succession for a single moment, while all the rest were in darkness. And after that single moment would itself fall into darkness again. Let there now be not one, but countless such spectators, as many in endless number as the objects of sight within the place, each spectator meandering in and out incessantly through the great crowd of all the others, each lamp, bringing momentarily into light one object, and for only that spectator who holds that lamp. This immense and unmoving building is the rock-bound ideation of the changeless Absolute. Each lamp-carrying spectator out of the countless crowd is one line of consciousness out of the pseudo-infinite lines of such that make up the totality of the one universal consciousness. Each coming into light of each object is its patency, is an experience of the jiva. Each falling into darkness is its lapse into the latent. From the standpoint of the objects themselves, or of the universal consciousness, there is no latency nor patency. From that of the lines of consciousness, there is. As vehicle after vehicle comes into fuller working, the area of light extends, and the consciousness can turn its attention to any one part of the area and observe closely the objects therein included. Thus, when the consciousness can function freely on the astral plane and is aware of its surroundings there, it can see much that on the physical plane is past or future, if they be things to which, in the past, it has learned to respond. Things outside the area of light coming through the vehicle of the astral body will be within the area of that which streams from the subtler mental vehicle. When the causal body is the vehicle, the memory of the past lives is recoverable, the causal body vibrating more readily to events to which it has before vibrated, and the light shining through it embracing a far larger area and illuminating scenes long past, those scenes being really no more past than the scenes of the present, but occupying a different spot in time and space. The lower vehicles, which have not previously vibrated to these events, cannot readily directly contact them and answer to them. That belongs to the causal body, the relatively permanent vehicle. But when this body answers to them, the vibrations from it readily run downwards and may be reproduced in the mental, astral, and physical bodies. Attention. The phrase is used above as to consciousness that it can turn its attention to any one part of the area and observe closely the objects therein included. This turning of attention corresponds very closely in consciousness to what we should call focusing the eye in the physical body. If we watch the action taking place in the muscles of the eye, when we look first at a near and then at a distant object, or vice versa, we shall be conscious of a slight movement, and this constriction or relaxation causes a slight compression or the reverse in the lenses of the eye. It is an automatic action now, quite instinctive, but it has only become so by practice. A baby does not focus his eye nor judge distance. He grasps as readily at a candle on the other side of the room as at one within his reach, and only slowly learns to know what is beyond his reach. The effort to see clearly leads to the focusing of the eye, and presently it becomes automatic. The objects for which the eye is focused are within the field of clear vision, and the rest are vaguely seen. So also the consciousness is clearly aware of that to which its attention is turned. Other things remain vague, out of focus. A man gradually learns to thus turn his attention to things long past as we measure time. The causal body is put into touch with them, and the vibrations are then transmitted to the lower bodies. The presence of a more advanced student will help a less advanced, because when the astral body of the former has been made to vibrate responsively to long past events, thus creating an astral picture of them, the astral body of the younger student can more readily reproduce these vibrations and thus also see. But even when a man has learned to put himself into touch with his past and through his own, with that of others connected with it, he will find it more difficult to turn his attention effectively to scenes with which he has had no connection. And when that is mastered, he will still find it difficult to put himself into touch with scenes outside the experience of his recent past. For instance, if he wishes to visit the moon and by his accustomed methods launches himself in that direction, he will find himself bombarded by a hail of unaccustomed vibrations to which he cannot instinctively respond, and will need to fall back on his inherent divine power to answer to anything which can affect his vehicles. If he seeks to go yet further to another planetary system, he will find a barrier he cannot overleap, the ring pass knot of his own planetary logos. So the one consciousness now. We thus begin to understand what is meant by the statement that people at a certain grade of evolution can reach this or that part of the cosmos. They can put themselves into touch with the consciousness of the logos outside the limitations imposed by their material vehicles on the less evolved. These vehicles, being composed of matter modified by the action of the planetary logos of the chain to which they belong, cannot respond to the vibrations of matter differently modified, and the student must be able to use his atomic body before he can contact the universal memory beyond the limits of his own chain. Such is the theory of memory which I present for the consideration of theosophical students. It applies equally to the small memories and forgetting of everyday life as to the vast reaches alluded to the above paragraph. For there is nothing small or great to the logos, and when we are performing the smallest act of memory, we are as much as putting ourselves into touch with the omnipresence and omniscience of the logos as when we are recalling a far-off past. There is no far off and no near. All are equally present at all times and in all spaces. The difficulty is with our vehicles and not with that all-embracing changeless life. All becomes more and more intelligible and more peace-giving as we think of that consciousness in which is no before and no after, no past and no future. We begin to feel that these things are but the illusions, the limitations, imposed upon us by our own sheets, necessary until our powers are evolved and at our service. We live unconsciously in this mighty consciousness, in which everything is eternally present, and we dimly feel that if we could live consciously in that eternal, there were peace. I know of nothing that can give more to the events of a life their true proportion than this idea of a consciousness in which everything is present from the beginning, in which indeed there is no beginning and no ending. We learn there is nothing terrible and nothing which is more than relatively sorrowful, and in that lesson is the beginning of a true peace, which in due course shall brighten into joy. All right, and with that, we've finished the first part of the book. And the second part of the book not being nearly as long, actually. So, yeah, we'll keep going. We'll pick this back up likely tomorrow and try to pull on this today and really attempt to concentrate on what we've talked about in these last couple of days in this chapter, being very profound and giving us this awareness that, I want to say if we're capable of using it, can be extremely helpful. So, all right, with that, I will see you soon. Thank you.